The ring box wasn't heavy, just loaded. It sat in my pocket like a sealed question I was too scared to let breathe. By the time she started talking about her quarterly metrics again, I wasn't even sure if I was still holding a romantic moment or a landmine. We were at a small Italian place in downtown Austin. Candlelight, real linen, the kind of bread they bring out warm and cut diagonally. I'd made the reservation 2 weeks in advance, picked the corner table near the window, and even left a note in the open table comment box that said, "Anniversary. Please seat us somewhere quiet." Emily looked good. That wasn't new. She always looked good. But that night, she'd worn the green dress I liked, the one that scooped low in the back. Her hair was curled at the ends and soft and bouncy, and she'd taken the time to wear that barely there perfume I could only describe as clean, sunlit skin. I wish I could say I was in the moment, that I soaked it in, appreciated it, told her how beautiful she looked. But mostly I was sweating through my undershirt, palms clammy under the table, rehearsing what I'd say when I pulled the box out. "You okay?" she asked, breaking off a piece of focaccia. I blinked. "What?" Yeah, just long week, you know." She gave me a little smile. "Same. Ben keeps calling these early stand-ups like we're all working from Singapore." I nodded, barely processing. Ben was her director, or maybe senior director now. I'd lost track. Every few months there was a new title in her department. She kept talking about her latest OKRs, how they'd finally gotten buy-in for the vendor migration, and how she'd been dropping hints about promotion timing during her one-on-ones. I stirred my wine glass in slow circles. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and chose not to name it. That's kind of how things had been lately, us running on parallel tracks, sometimes overlapping, but mostly just close enough. The waiter came by to take our entrees. She ordered the seafood risotto. I went with lamb. He cleared the appetizer plates, and I gave him the briefest of nods. I'd planned this. All of it. A quiet dinner. Dessert. Then the ask. We were 5 years in. Met at a friend's 4th of July party. Mutual friend from college. Mutual disdain for lawn games. Mutual escape to the kitchen, where we'd ended up slicing watermelon and talking until midnight. She told me later it was the first party she'd gone to after quitting her first job. I'd just gotten out of a long, burnt-out relationship. We clicked. Moved in together by year 2. Bought a used Camry together by year 3. Split the rent, the chores, the vet bills. And by year 4, I'd started thinking, if not her, then who? That's what made the hesitation worse. It wasn't cold feet. I wasn't scared of commitment. I was scared of something else. Of being too much, or worse, asking too much. I'd heard her talk about this promotion for the past year. How it would put her into leadership. How only 2 women had ever held the role in her org. How she'd have a seat at the table instead of just being the one prepping the deck. So I waited and waited until finally I thought, no, this is us. This is our life too, and I want her in it. By the time dessert menus came around, I could barely taste my dinner. She ordered tiramisu. I passed. I had other things on my mind. The box was still in my pocket. The box. Black velvet. Simple. No oversized gem. No spectacle. A round-cut diamond in a yellow gold band, vintage-inspired. I'd picked it with the help of her sister Becca. I'd triple-checked the ring size by measuring a pair of her old stacking rings with a paper ruler. I waited until the plates were cleared, until we had fresh glasses of water. I reached into my pocket and took a breath. And just before I could move, she leaned forward, her face lit with an energy I hadn't seen since her promotion pitch last quarter. "I think it's happening." I froze. She wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were past me, darting like she was assembling her own future. I had a one-on-one with Ben this morning. He said my numbers were the strongest on the team this cycle, and I saw his Slack status change to QBR prep right after. That only means one thing. They're finalizing promos before next month's all hands. I nodded slowly, hands still in my pocket. She kept going. If it happens, I'll be the youngest senior manager in the Austin office, maybe even the entire Southwest region. That's amazing, Em. She smiled, but it was distracted. She sipped her water and checked her phone when it buzzed, only briefly, but I saw the little Slack icon glow. I thought, it's not the right time. But then I thought, when is? I'd waited. I'd supported. I'd made space. But we weren't just our jobs. We weren't just spreadsheets and metrics and promo cycles. We were more. Or we had been. I took the box out and placed it gently on the table between us. Her eyes landed on it like it was a foreign object. For a moment, she didn't move, didn't blink. Sam. I didn't make a speech. I couldn't. My mouth was dry, and every version of the words I'd practiced felt rehearsed and ridiculous. So I said the only thing that felt real. I love you. I want this. Us. The next step. With you. She stared at the box, then at me, and then she said the sentence I didn't expect. Can we wait? The silence was clean. No clatter. No background music I could use as an excuse to pretend I didn't hear her right. Wait? I echoed. She looked pained, but not surprised. It's not that I don't want this, she said quickly, hands up like she was trying to catch the falling pieces. I do. It's just, right now, things are about to shift for me. This promotion, if it happens, it's going to change everything. Travel, visibility, the kinds of meetings I'll be in. And if we get engaged now, people will think... She caught herself, bit her lip. I didn't help. I needed her to finish that sentence. She exhaled. They'll think I got it because of you. Because I settled down. Because I'm more stable now. I've worked too hard for that to be the narrative. The waiter brought the check. I didn't even look at it. Just handed over my card. I didn't say much on the way home. She did. She kept explaining. Kept trying to make me understand. This isn't a no, Sam. It's a not yet. Just give me a couple more months. After the promo's official, after I've had time to settle into it, we can talk. I promise. I nodded when I was supposed to. But in the dark parking garage, the ring box still in my jacket, I couldn't shake the feeling that the proposal was the first thing I'd done for myself in a long time, and it still hadn't been about me. At home, she kissed me on the cheek and went to change out of her dress. I watched the bathroom lights slice under the door and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror across the room. Not angry, not hurt, just removed. Like the version of me in that mirror had already moved on while I was still sitting there catching up. I didn't return the ring, not yet. I tucked it back into the sock drawer under a rolled-up pair of thermals, and for the first time in 5 years, I went to bed before her, without saying goodnight. Did you schedule the vet thing? She asked, tying her hair into a loose bun like nothing had changed. I nodded. Yeah. We didn't say anything else about the ring. That was the new rhythm. Unspoken things folded into daily logistics. Food schedules. Dental cleanings for the cat. Car maintenance. We were still living together. Still waking up next to each other. Still making grocery lists on the shared app. But the weight of that night pressed between us like a coffee table we kept bumping our shins against but never acknowledged. 2 weeks had passed. She was busier than ever. Longer days. Zoom calls spilling past dinner. Slack DMs pinging while we brushed our teeth. I'd wake up to see her already sitting at the kitchen table, headset on, laptop open, a half-drunk cup of coffee cooling beside her. The ring stayed buried in the drawer. One night, I got home late from a shift. I work in property management, specifically maintenance coordination for 3 mid-sized apartment buildings in North Austin. It's not glamorous, but it's steady, and I'm good at it. I know which elevators always stick, which boilers need extra coaxing in the winter, which tenants to call before dispatching a plumber so they don't panic. That night, we'd had a leak emergency, ceiling collapse, in Unit 214 due to a busted upstairs water heater, and I spent 3 hours fielding angry voicemails while juggling 2 crews on overtime. I got home around 9, exhausted, still smelling faintly of drywall dust and mildew. Emily was on the couch with her laptop, AirPods in, watching some corporate training video. The only light was the screen's glow and the string of Edison bulbs we'd strung up on the balcony last fall. She glanced up. Hey. Hey. Dinner's in the fridge. I ordered ramen. I mumbled thanks, went to the kitchen, and stared at the takeout container for a while before deciding I wasn't hungry. Back in the living room, she had one AirPod out. You good? She asked. Just tired. She nodded, didn't press. I sat on the opposite end of the couch, not touching. I thought about the ring, thought about taking it out and just tossing it in her lap. Not as a proposal, just as a goddamn conversation starter. Instead, I asked, so any updates? She looked confused. On? The promotion. Oh, she said, blinking. Yeah, maybe. I had another check-in with Ben. He asked if I'd be open to relocating eventually. I said yes. That was new. Relocating where? She shrugged. They're expanding the Denver office. It wouldn't be for a while. Could just be exploratory. I nodded, but something in me curled. And you'd want that? She turned slightly toward me. It's not about want, Sam. It's about visibility. If I want to move up faster, I have to go where the opportunities are. The room felt suddenly colder. You tell me this now? She raised an eyebrow. It's not a decision. It's a conversation. I'm telling you now. Okay. She turned back to her laptop. That was the whole talk. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek before leaving for work and called back over her shoulder, "Don't forget the vet appointment's at 6. She didn't notice I never said goodbye. I called Becca that night. Emily's sister and I weren't particularly close, but we'd gotten along over the years. Birthdays, holidays, a few backyard BBQs. She helped me pick the ring. She was rooting for us. Hey, what's up? She answered, casual. Just, needed someone to talk to. Oh, she said, immediately softer. Is this about the proposal? I sat on the floor with my back against the dryer, the only room in the apartment where the cat wouldn't follow me. She said to wait, I said, because of her promotion. Becca was quiet for a beat. Damn. Yeah. She tell you how long? Nope. Just after, whatever that means. She does care about you, Becca said finally. I know it probably doesn't feel like it right now, but she does. I'm not asking for some fairy tale, I said. I just thought 5 years in, I'd get a straight answer. There was a pause, then her voice shifted slightly. Look, I'm going to say something and you don't have to like it, but I've been watching this from the outside for a while. Okay. She's been climbing the ladder nonstop since year 2. You've been steady, supportive, predictable. That's not a bad thing. But I don't think she knows how to see you without seeing stability. What does that mean? It means she might love you, but she doesn't need you. Not in the way people need when they build a life. She knows you'll always be there. The following week, I tried to test that. I didn't mean to, not consciously, but it started with little things. I let the dishes pile up one extra day. Didn't refill the Brita. Left my laundry unfolded. Skipped the grocery list sync. She noticed. Of course she noticed. But she didn't say anything until Wednesday night, when she was trying to find a clean spoon and finally lost it. Sam, seriously? You couldn't take 5 seconds to clean this? I shrugged. Been busy. So have I. Right. Don't do that. Do what? She slammed the drawer shut. Passive-aggressive martyr crap. That was the first time we'd argued in a while. It fizzled fast, both of us too tired to escalate. But the air was heavier, our silences louder. Friday came, and with it, the email. She burst into the apartment at 6:15, heels clicking fast across the floor, her face lit up like she'd just hit the jackpot. "I got it," she said breathlessly. "Sam, I got it. Senior manager. It's official. It's happening." I stood from the couch. That's... wow. That's huge. She rushed over and hugged me tight. I hugged her back, but I felt like I was watching myself from a distance. She kissed my cheek and laughed into my neck. "I need to call my parents, and Becca, and like 10 other people. And oh my God, I think we should go out." "Should we go out? Let's go out." She was already opening her closet, pulling things out, half talking to herself. I sat back down. After about 10 minutes, she stopped in the hallway, holding up a pair of earrings. "You okay?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. Her eyes were wild with joy, uncontainable. I smiled because I was supposed to. "Yeah, just tired. You celebrate. I think I'm gonna stay in." "You sure?" "Yeah." She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, I won't be too late." She wasn't. But when she climbed into bed that night, slightly buzzed and glowing, I was already facing the wall. She didn't try to turn me over. The next morning, I opened the sock drawer and took the ring out again. Not for proposing, just to look. It felt smaller now. Or maybe I felt bigger. I wasn't sure which scared me more. It was Tuesday morning, 7:53, when I realized I hadn't kissed her goodbye in over a week. She left with her usual "have a good one," and I just said, "You too," without looking up from my cereal. She didn't look back. That kind of thing sneaks up on you. Not the silence itself, but the way it settles. Quietly, politely, without malice. Like a house guest who rearranges your furniture while you sleep. It's not just the absence of arguments. It's the absence of noticing. We were functioning. Still making rent. Still doing dishes, eventually. Still feeding the cat. But there was no eye contact that lingered. No casual shoulder brushes in the hallway. No arms reaching for the same coffee mug at the same time and laughing about it. It was like she'd gotten the promotion. And somewhere in the fine print, she'd been upgraded to a life I no longer quite fit inside. That Thursday, I got a text from my buddy Drew. "Hey man, we still on for Sunday? Game night at my place, 6 p.m. Bring something loud for snacks, LOL." I hadn't been to one in a while. Game nights used to be a thing when we first moved in together, our social group's way of staying sane. Code names, settlers, whatever. I used to drag Emily to them, and she'd sip wine and beat everyone at Taboo, and then claim she hated competitive games. But lately, she'd been too wiped, or had a deck due, or needed to follow up on a fire drill email. So I stopped asking. I texted back, "Yeah, I'll be there." And then added, almost without thinking, "Just me." That night, while she was on a video call in the bedroom, I stood in the kitchen drinking a beer and listening to her through the closed door. I couldn't hear the words, just the rhythm, her excited voice, the affirmations, the occasional laugh that was a little too professional to be real. And I felt something I didn't want to name. Not jealousy, not resentment, just distance. Like I was listening to a person I used to know really well, talking to a room I'd never been invited into. The next morning I left before she woke up. Left a note. Had an early work order downtown. Didn't want to wake you. It wasn't entirely a lie. I did have a call at 8. But I also just needed air. I sat in the truck after the job, watching dust float through the sunlight coming in sideways, and realized something dumb but obvious. I missed her. But I didn't miss the version I'd been seeing lately. I missed the Emily who used to argue with me about pizza toppings, who used to put her cold feet under my thighs on the couch, who used to pull me into the middle of the living room just to dance for 30 seconds to a song on the radio. The version who would have said yes, or at least said, "I love you. Let's talk about what this means." Sunday came. Game night. I changed shirts 3 times. Not because I was trying to impress anyone, just because I felt weird showing up anywhere alone. I brought a bag of Loud Kettle chips and a 6-pack. The second I walked in, Drew clapped me on the back. "Dude, finally! Where's Emily?" I shrugged. "Busy." He made a sympathetic face and said nothing, which I appreciated. The night was good. Loud, dumb, familiar. We played a new board game someone brought that none of us understood, made up rules halfway through, and still laughed like we were 22 again. Around 9, I stepped outside onto the porch to get some air. That's when Mallory joined me. Mallory was Drew's wife's cousin, or sister-in-law's best friend. I never kept track. We'd met a few times before, and she was always sharp, observant, the kind of person who doesn't say much but sees everything. She offered me one of those fizzy canned cocktails and leaned against the porch railing. "You good?" she asked. "Yeah." "You sure?" I gave a soft laugh. I proposed. She said to wait. Mallory tilted her head. "Wait? Until after her promotion." Mallory raised her eyebrows. "That's specific." "Yeah." "Did she give you a timeline?" "Nope." Yikes. We stood in silence for a minute. Then she said, "You ever think you're not waiting for the right person to say yes, just for the wrong one to say something else?" I stared out at the yard, at the citronella candle flickering on the patio table. "All the time, Jim," I said. When I got home, the apartment was dark. Emily was asleep, curled on her side, one arm tucked under the pillow. Her face looked soft, peaceful, like someone who didn't know she'd missed anything. I sat on the edge of the bed, then stood back up, went to the sock drawer, held the ring in my hand again. I didn't open it. I just stood there. Then I put it back. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for wishing I'd never bought it. Monday morning, something shifted. I didn't say goodbye. She didn't say good morning. We didn't fight. We just lived around each other like roommates, like distant colleagues on separate projects. That night, she got home late. I was already halfway through a beer and folding laundry on the couch. She kicked off her heels, dropped her bag, and sat down next to me. "I'm tired," she said. I nodded. She hesitated, then added, of whatever this is." I looked up. "What is this?" I asked. "I don't know," she admitted, "but it's not us, or at least not how we used to be." I nodded again. "You were right, you know." She looked surprised. "About what?" "The promotion. Waiting. I get it. I do. But I shouldn't have had to wait alone." She flinched, just slightly. We sat like that, close but miles apart, for a long time. And then she whispered, "Do you still want to marry me?" That was the question, wasn't it? Did I? I used to ask myself that every time I saw her smile, every time she left me a Post-it note with a joke on it, every time she made fun of my snore or insisted on adopting a second cat just to keep the first one company. But now, I didn't know anymore. So I said, "I think we need to talk." Halfway through folding her hoodie, I stopped. The sleeves were twisted. The tag was sticking out, and I suddenly couldn't remember the last time she'd worn it. That's when I realized I was folding her laundry like I still knew her, like we were still synced. We didn't talk again that night. I'd said, "I think we need to talk." And she'd nodded like she agreed, but then she got up, said she was exhausted, and disappeared into the bedroom. I stayed on the couch, not out of anger, out of preservation. Because if I went in there, if I tried to have the talk while she was in shutdown mode, we'd only end up circling the same polite, well-worded evasions, the same non-answers dressed up as empathy. We'd both gotten too good at that. The next morning was a Sunday. It was raining, light, steady, and constant. The kind of rain that makes time feel slower, makes you notice things, like the drip from the corner of the AC unit onto the balcony, like the way our cat, Baxter, sat next to the sliding door and tracked the drops with his eyes, like the 2 mugs on the drying rack, still there from Friday night. I made coffee, not for both of us, just 1 cup, not out of spite, just instinct. She walked in around 10 in one of my old shirts. "Hey," she said, voice soft. "Morning." She looked at the coffee in my hand, then back at me, said nothing. "I was thinking," I started, and she raised her eyebrows. "Okay. Do you remember our 2nd-year anniversary?" She smiled faintly. "The Airbnb with the fireplace?" "Yeah, the one with the crooked pool table in the game room." She nodded, the smile growing. "And that weird painting of the deer smoking a pipe." I laughed. "God, yeah, that thing was terrifying." We shared that laugh for a second too long, like we didn't know how to stop it once it started. "I brought that up, Utz," I said, "because that weekend, something shifted for me." She tilted her head. "Shifted how?" "I remember watching you play pool, barefoot, with that ridiculous oversized cue because the short ones were missing, and I thought, this is it. I want to do life with her." Her expression softened. Her mouth opened a little, but she didn't speak. I let the pause stretch. "But lately," I said, "I feel like I'm just watching you play the game, and I'm not even in the room anymore." She sat across from me at the table, the same table we'd eaten 1,000 meals at, folded laundry, paid bills, laughed until we couldn't breathe. She placed her hands on the wood. "Sam," she said carefully, "I need to be honest with you, even if it's messy. Please. When you proposed, I wasn't shocked because you wanted to marry me. I was shocked because I'd been trying not to think about whether we were still supposed to." That hit like a cold slap, but I didn't flinch. She kept going. "I didn't say no because I didn't love you. I have. But I've also been growing into this new version of myself, and I don't think I realized how far I'd gone without turning around to see if you were still walking with me." I sat back, staring at the ring-shaped coffee stain on the table from weeks ago. "I thought I was supporting you," I said. "You were. You are. But sometimes, support turns into background. And I started seeing you as comfort, stability, safety, all good things, but not a partner," I finished. Tears welled in her eyes. "That's not fair to say. You've always been a partner." "But not your partner," I clarified. "Not the one you bring into the pitch, or the plan, or the dream. I became the guy who waters the plants and picks up the dry cleaning while you take off." Her face crumpled. She wiped it quickly, like efficiency would soften the emotion. "I don't want to break this." "But you don't want to stay in it either," I said. She said nothing, and there it was, the most honest silence we'd had in months. That afternoon, I packed a bag, not everything, just enough. 2 days' worth of clothes, a toothbrush, my laptop, chargers. She didn't stop me. She didn't cry either. She stood in the doorway and asked, "Where will you go?" "Drew's for now," he offered. She nodded. Then, "Can I call you?" "I think we need some space first," I said, "to figure out if we miss us, or just the routine." Her mouth trembled, but she nodded again. I walked out into the drizzle, my hoodie pulled over my head. Didn't look back. The first night away was quiet. Too quiet. No sound of her walking barefoot across the tile to the fridge. No click of her makeup case closing in the bathroom. No Baxter pawing at the door between us. Just me and the guest room at Drew's. A beige blanket, a clean towel, a couple of sympathy beers in the fridge. He didn't pry, just handed me the remote and said, "You want to talk? I'm here." I didn't. Not yet. I stayed 3 nights. On the 4th, she texted, "I moved your tools into the hallway closet so Baxter won't knock them over. Hope that's okay." I stared at it for a while, reread it twice. Typed, then deleted, then finally replied, "Thanks, appreciate it." Nothing else. By the end of that week, I knew. I didn't miss the shared space. I didn't miss the calendar invites or synced grocery lists or joint Amazon account. I missed her, but not who she was now. I missed the potential I thought we still had. And that's when I finally opened the ring box again. Not to give it, not to hide it, but to say goodbye to the idea it represented. Sunlight hit the engagement ring like it was auditioning for a jewelry ad. Perfect angle, sharp sparkle. And all I could think was, I never even got to hear her say no. It was a full week before we saw each other again. Drew had a work trip, and I didn't want to impose on Mallory. She'd been gracious enough already. So I texted Emily. "I'll swing by Saturday morning to grab the rest of my stuff. Should only take an hour." She replied in less than a minute. "Okay, I'll be out for a run. Let me know if you need help finding anything." That stung more than it should have. It wasn't rude. It wasn't cold. It was considerate even, but that was the problem. We'd gone from laughter and pillow fights and impromptu slow dances in the kitchen to logistics, like coworkers dividing up shared supplies after a project dissolves. Saturday came. I got there around 10. Key still worked. The apartment was clean, almost suspiciously so. There was a fresh citrus smell in the air that I didn't recognize, like she'd wiped everything down right before leaving, including the air. The framed photo of us at the Barton Springs Overlook was gone. So was the fridge magnet from that New Mexico road trip. But my old guitar was still in the corner, the one she hated but never made me get rid of. I walked from room to room with a laundry basket, collecting things, extra shoes, that worn hoodie I thought I lost, my shaving kit, chargers, tools. Everything was easy to find. That was the other sting. She hadn't made a mess of it. No chaotic pile of my things shoved in a box, no confusion, no "whose is this" dance, just clean separation, like she'd already practiced letting me go before I asked. I saved the sock drawer for last. The ring was still there. Same little box. Still closed. Still honest. I held it for a while, turning it over in my hand, wondering if it had ever really belonged in this place to begin with. Then I slipped it into the zippered pocket of my duffel and zipped it halfway shut. That's when I heard the door open behind me. Emily stepped inside in running shorts and a black tank top, earbuds still in. She froze when she saw me. "I thought you'd be gone already," she said, tugging one earbud out. "I was about to be." She hesitated, then crossed to the counter, grabbed her water bottle. "I didn't think you'd leave the guitar," she said, nodding at the corner. I shrugged. "Figured it'd be one less thing for you to trip over." She smiled, small, tired. "Thanks." For a second, that was it. That was going to be the goodbye. But then she asked, "Do you want to sit for a minute?" I looked at the door, my bag, then her. "Yeah, okay." We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, same as always, but everything else had changed. She was the one who broke the silence. "Ben offered me a role in Denver." I blinked. "That was fast." She nodded. "I leave in 6 weeks." "Are you taking it?" "I think I have to." I swallowed that slowly. "I want to be excited for you," I said. She said. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I know." We sat a little longer, just breathing in the space we were about to not share anymore. Then she said, "You were never holding me back." I looked up. "I know," I said, "but that doesn't mean we were moving forward together." She blinked fast, once, twice. "Did you ever open the box?" she asked, voice barely audible. I pulled it from the duffel, placed it on the table between us, still closed. She stared at it like it was radioactive. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" "For wanting it all but not knowing how to want it with someone." That one landed. I nodded. "I'm sorry too." "For what?" "For not realizing that love needs updating, like software. We kept running on version 1 until everything crashed." We both let out a short, mirthless laugh at the same time. "I'll miss you," she said. "I'll miss the way we were," I answered, and I meant that. Because sometimes you miss the blueprint, even when the house doesn't stand. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. I stood, slung the bag over my shoulder, took one last look at the place I'd tried to build something in. Then I left the ring box on the table. She didn't stop me. A month later, I got a text from her. "Hey, just wanted you to know I didn't take the ring with me. No picture, no signature, just that." I didn't reply. There wasn't anything left to say. The ring is still in that apartment, probably in the back of some drawer or storage bin. Maybe she'll find it years from now while unpacking a box in Denver or Chicago or wherever she goes next. Maybe she'll smile, or maybe she'll flinch. Either way, I'm not waiting on it anymore. I gave someone my heart. She asked me to wait, so I did. And somewhere in the waiting, I remembered who I was, without needing permission. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.